So next up, we have an entrepreneurship chat on nanotech startups. So we will have Gabriel Cossio, the founder and CEO of Nanoscale Labs, Elise Liberto, the managing director of private investments at Brown Advisory, and John Slack, the founder and CEO of Rhoic. Thank you so much for being here, guys.
Perfect. Excited to be joined, as was just described, with Coleman, Gabriel, and John here. In true entrepreneurial fashion, we have not prepared much for this. But I think that it's a good way to round out just what it looks like to build a business in 2025 that is at the nexus of hard tech, frontier tech, do it alongside university tech and resources. And so just to start off, we have a fairly wide variety of types of companies that each of the entrepreneurs here is building. So maybe just in a row. Coleman, could you start on just what you're building and maybe a little bit on why?
Okay, so yeah, hi everyone. I'm Coleman White with Verified Carbon, and I would say the epitome of a startup out of this great University of Texas. It's myself and then Dr. Tip Meckel, the leading researcher of carbon sequestration here at UT. And what we do is we develop the subsurface components for direct air capture facilities. We're also diving into software and trying to make carbon capture and storage projects investable on an institutional scale. We've seen that a lot of these larger institutions are developing a carbon team and trying to dabble in carbon sequestration, whether it's direct air capture or point source, but they don't have that expertise readily available on staff. And so with our expertise being sequestration, developing some kind of software component to where a institution can go and grade projects based on risk is something we're developing at Verified Carbon.
Yeah, and I'm Gabriel Cossio. I was recently, I've been here a super long time. I did my undergrad in physics here, and then my PhD, and then my postdoc. So, but now I have spun out this company based off my postdoc research, which is Nanoscale Labs. And what we do is we created a new way to create nanotechnology that lowers the manufacturing costs by like 1,000x. So you can't use our platform to create chips, but you can use it to make pretty much any other kind of nano-enhanced product. So we sacrificed a little bit of resolution to get a huge increase in throughput and huge decreases in manufacturing costs.
Hi, I'm John Slack. I'm the founder and CEO of Rhoic, and we have developed an ultra-fast and scalable nanofiber manufacturing platform. And no matter what technology is going to be used in energy transitions as we move forward, the most important thing is that they are scalable and cost-effective. And so in the technologies that are being developed here, having an eye toward both of those things is going to be paramount, and making sure that you're staying focused on delivering products that are actually going to be able to be commercially viable. And so our technique builds on a century-old technology called electrospinning. We are now, we make these products that themselves are relatively miraculous in terms of, a chewing gum stick worth of materials, a football field's worth of surface area. And those have, in the past, been relatively slow and expensive to make. And what we're doing is another 80x reduction in cost and scalability to make that, bring those to market.
Cool. And since we do have a wide variety, we were just going to extrapolate out on lessons learned as it relates to kind of capital, talent, and then technology development for these hard tech companies that are solving big problems. Maybe it just can be the same order, it can be different. Reflect a little bit on how you're thinking about the capital needed to get to the next step or phase in the companies you all are creating. Are you leveraging traditional venture capital? Or are you thinking about non-dilutive sources? And just, it's going to be different from company to company, but where you are in that journey.
Yeah, I mean, I'll take the first stab at it. We're in direct air capture development, and obviously with the new administration, there's been DOE funding very prevalent for DAC projects, DAC hubs, and now there isn't, or now there is a lot of uncertainty behind that fundraise. And so we have currently 3 projects proposed, all within, well, one actually new within Colorado, but 2 within Texas. And the traditional fundraising route for DAC projects in general has been, okay, you apply for this DOE program, you get 50% of your CapEx, and you find that other 50% with the DOE being more committed. That funding recently got pulled. And so we have a partnership with a company called Return with Thankfully. They're Dutch-based. They're the largest private investor in energy transition infrastructure throughout Europe. A lot of battery storage, a lot of solar, a lot of wind. And so currently, it's super counterintuitive, right? Because every startup within Europe comes to the US to fundraise. And we're a startup within the US, and we're leveraging family offices and such in Europe to fundraise on a project-based finance level. So it's been a learning experience, and with all this ambiguity within the DAC market, it's just the way we're looking at it is bring one project to FID or financial close, have that model project prove a technology agnostic co-location of renewables, DAC, and company-owned storage model, have that to lean back on, and then commercialize the DAC infrastructure at scale. But yeah, the fundraising aspect on a project level for a new technology is a hurdle that we're currently navigating.
Yeah, and to follow that, so Nanoscale is kind of like, we've invented a new way to do nano manufacturing. So in essence, we kind of have 2 products to commercialize. It's the platform that creates the nanotechnology, but then also no one wants to buy a machine that you can use to do nano things. They want an end product that solves problems for their company or for some application. So we also have to create that product. And so that makes like deep tech, hard tech commercialization pretty hard because it's all infrastructure costs, real materials are expensive. And so the traditional like VC mindset of like returns in 5 years don't really apply, because in 5 years you might have made that platform and you just started like selling your first potential product at that point. And so what I found to be useful is it turns out there's the federal government, and they like to support new innovations, particularly ones that serve like the future economy or like American resilience for economic resilience. And so looking at all the different agencies and the funding they offer to kind of like help accelerate the technology development has been pretty key, because those people are also scientists that are also civil servants that really understand what it takes to kind of like, it means to put the pedal to the metal and build a real mechanical object for commercialization.
I might just add some flavor that there are VCs that still believe and understand the promise of sustainability and climate technology. And I mean, we just heard from one today. So I think as far as making sure that you're making the right partnerships, both with potential investors, but also potential customers, understanding what your path to revenue looks like is really going to, for anyone considering entrepreneurship, just understanding really, really well what your unit economics are and what the path toward market looks like is going to make that journey easier.
So maybe on path to market, we just hit on capital. Maybe we switch to something more fun on customers and customer discovery for students who are thinking about entrepreneurial journeys. How have you guys navigated just finding those early customers that are going to start generating revenue for your businesses, and what does that look like to date?
Maybe
and feel free to brag.
Yeah. Sure, yeah, I'll kick us off actually. So in a similar way, technologies that can act as platforms that can go into multiple markets at once are a double-edged sword, in that the total addressable market is quite large, but finding out where you're going to break in, where is your specific wedge, is going to be a little bit harder when your technology is that much more versatile. And so really just being an incredibly good active listener and going to understand what are the pain points in what are the biggest markets, and asking critical questions and being critical of yourself and being just very truth-seeking has been incredibly valuable. So I'm not sure if there's specific customers you're interested in us bragging about, but.
Well, I actually do think, at least for more of the nanotech companies, the first 2 here, there's so many different types of customers that could be using your platforms, and we can also talk about the direct air capture side, but how do you even start to think about, I've got this platform technology, which end market do I choose? How have you guys been navigating those opportunities that are in front of you?
Sorry, yeah, just to continue it's half mission. What is it that I want to accomplish with my life, with what is possible here, and making sure that the impact on the world is a net positive to help people. And the other half is the market big enough? Is the problem big enough? What's the Venn diagram overlap of how impactful our technology can be to solving this problem? So I'll just...
Yeah, and then similar, to kind of like put in perspective this double-edged sword and broad use case. So one of the things we can do is throw on some spherical nanoparticles on a bunch of different types of materials. And if you throw it on glass or plastic, it ends up making solar panels way more efficient. And that's actually how I first met Brian, which was through research at UT doing that. But then the same structures, it turns out if you put them on medical implants like titanium alloy implants or even silicone or even like polymer implants, you can prevent bacteria from accumulating on them, which causes infections and a huge amount of capital problems for hospitals because those people need to come back, get it taken out, they'd have to stay in the hospital, recover, and then get a new implant. And then you could also throw it on like a CPU heatsink, same structures, increase the surface area of that by like 10x, and then improve cooling for data centers. So the same nanoscaled structure across 3 different materials has completely different applications. And so I went to school and I only really learned about one, which was solar. And so I had to like leverage the knowledge of my PhD, which was really just like, how can I learn about a new field of science as quickly as possible to then run to a conference, talk to relevant people, write down relevant numbers, be like, okay, hit 80% improvement on this random metric that I've never heard about in my life before, but now it's super important to the future of my company. And so the speed at which you can learn about different markets and different technologies has been really critical to figuring out like who is the most important first customer or beachhead.
Yeah, and I'm gonna be more general here, but in terms of customer discovery or prospecting or anything, I think the major problem that most companies have is they don't start because it's hard, right? Like you don't listen to your companies because you're too busy writing the perfect email to send to one person instead of writing maybe a more general email and sending it out to 500 people to actually get those data points to listen to. Because to be candidly honest, sitting in an office sending 500 random LinkedIn DMs isn't fun, and being told no by 498 of them, and then but you get the 2 data points of an actual genuine interview, but you really have to go through that process, and it's just all about starting. And you should have to start, put your head down, say this is what I'm gonna start with, and if it doesn't work, you pivot and you start somewhere else. But you have to know what works, and you have to know what doesn't, and you have to implement in those strategies to see if it works or see if it doesn't, because eventually you're going to find what works.
So maybe just on the thread of there's a lot you figure out along the way. One of the themes we all talked about in our prep was, 1, a shared love of Brian, but also 2, just how you can leverage resources from the university system in different systems, perhaps for the 3 of you. But maybe just talk a little bit for, again, more entrepreneurial folks in the crowd or folks that are affiliated with the university system. How can you navigate where to pull resources from? How should people be thinking about using their university to increase their probability of success? And maybe you can reflect a little bit on your journeys out of UT and Vanderbilt.
Yeah, honestly, I'll take a stab at this because I am the biggest component, and I am so grateful for this university as a whole because to be honest, I got my hand held through a startup, 100%. I was there from all the way through my undergrad and did my master's here. Master's here to stay to keep the resources because that's how important they were for me. I had a conversation with a couple of students earlier at one of those tables, and my advice to them is dream as big of idea as you possibly can and go ask for help. And it's honestly, most people think too small because it's I want to go build direct air capture facilities, And it's, okay, you talk to the Innovation Center. The Innovation Center introduces me to the co-founder, Dr. Meckel, who introduces me to his entire network, who, again, Noor at the Energy Institute or Barrett at Launchpad UT. The entire university system is set up to help you as a student. And everyone within, I was in the Macomb School of Business, went out in their career and was the best in marketing, the best in finance, started some hedge fund, and now they're coming back to the university, not because they're gonna make any more money, they're coming back to give back. And so being a student, they're trying to give back to you. And so always dream as big as you can, go to your faculty members excited and ask for help, because they are willing to open up their network that they spent 50 years in industry building that you don't have to go and build yourself. Everyone likes helping a student. I'm really mad that they took away my student email account. I used it for 6 months after I was graduated with my master's program, and they finally kicked me out of it. So I need to talk to someone in this room about maybe still look like a student.
Yeah, it's similar. Besides just the institutional advantages of like the departments that are here to help you, particularly for like deep tech innovations, like there are so many experts amongst the faculty of like different science topics, and then even amongst the experts, there's like national experts and world experts. So just being steeped in kind of like the interdisciplinary research and like going to this colloquium, even though it's biology, it seems really cool to me. You, particularly also for a platform, you would be surprised at how insightful new ideas pop into like my brain from going to like a biology or bioengineering talk, even though my background's in physics. And so it really helps like keep the creativity of like next application, who to learn from to develop a solution to this one problem that's not my expertise. So leveraging the academic expertise and scientific expertise is super helpful for troubleshooting and discovering new applications.
I am the exact opposite. I did not spin out of a university. I spent some tenure in industry and wanted to spread my wings, and I wanted to have more freedom, and I started drowning in freedom. The path of an entrepreneur is one of extreme self-growth, I think, if you're doing it right. It's going to be very uncomfortable. And I can say to anybody who's considering it, for me, it was one of probably the most impactful decision I made in my life, and one of the most fulfilling. And it's sort of a little bit about how you define success for yourself, but for me, it's a matter of acting in accordance with my values, and that keeping a cool head when shit is hitting the fan. Not to say that obviously support from a university system is going to be absolutely critical, but in the event that you don't, you absolutely can still be successful. So just to say, don't be afraid to stand on your own feet and drown a little bit.
Cool. Well, I've at least one more question, but I know we've got a wide variety of panelists, so maybe we can open up for Q&A if anyone has anything specific or general or burning questions from the crowd.
Ask your question.
Okay, well, I was gonna just make sure we end kind of on a positive note. I mean, so assuming you guys all get the customers right, commercialization right, capital right, just what are you most excited about to put into the world? Just what do your businesses look like 5-10 years from now when you're crushing it, and we all remember this panel with future unicorn founders? What's happening? What does your companies out there?
So, I mean, what makes us unique at Verified and Return Carbon is we're commercializing direct air capture technology at scale. Right now, how the DAC industry sits is technology developers are tasked with project development also. It's two completely different expertises, but if you look at any other industry with like wind and Vespas and GE, the technology developers in the infancy of that industry had to project develop to prove out their technology. And the same thing's happening within DAC. And then with wind, companies like NextEra and EDF and all of these companies came and commercialized that technology. That's what we're doing for DAC. So we're taking the best tech and using our project development expertise to build projects that have a real impact with 50,000 tons scaling to 500,000 tons annually. And we've had success with the behind-the-meter model and the co-location with renewables. We've partnered with Granalia from Spain, and at the Direct Air Capture Conference, we just announced a partnership with EDF Renewables. And so we've seen that we can offer a flexible power purchase agreement to give them a floor price, but also access to the peak pricing, because we can scale up and down our energy consumption, which helps us compete with the deep pockets of the data centers and such that are competing for these behind-the-meter agreements. And so if we can prove out this model in the carbon offset markets becomes commoditized and DAC becomes profitable, what we've seen is we can source and create an almost drag-and-drop copy-paste model to where we can have real impact within the carbon removal space.
Yeah, and I'm super excited about, I mean, I'm biased, but my own company's technology. And so, like, to put into context, like, what we do, it's like we can control what happens at a scale that's like 4 or 5 times smaller than visible light. So, like, 10,000 times thinner than your hair kind of stuff. And by engineering and manipulating stuff at that scale, like, the world's your oyster on, like, new technology developments. And so, like, my dream when I, like, think about how cool this could be is, like, Samsung makes, like, phones and, like, washing machines and, like, everything in between, heavy industry stuff. Like, I'm super pumped to commercialize, obviously, first the beachhead, but then, like, what other super impactful both energy resource developments and, like, new technology developments can come out of my technology. Because I read academic papers, I read stuff about startups and like large-scale companies, and I look at my technology and I'm like, oh, I could do that too? I can do this? Okay, let's do it. So I'm just excited to see where the technology goes.
Yeah, the question about where is your biggest dream is such a interesting and fun one for these platform kind of technologies. The fact is that what Rhoic has done is made it possible to use nanofiber materials in industries that could not have used them before due to cost and quality assurance and even form factor. And so areas like cleaning up our environment from the forever chemicals, or helping DAC companies to remove CO2, or acting as energy generation itself. There's lots of different areas where nanofibers can be implemented, and just sort of taking it one bite at a time, finding that growth path, I think, is going to be just super fun.
And you guys have all been, oh, we got a question on here.
Thank you for sharing your stories and entrepreneurial journey. So personally, I believe that entrepreneurship can be taught and inspired. And but of course, no entrepreneurs go in with all the required skill sets. Now, could you share one specific area that you felt like of course, you believe that you're going to be a great founder, but at the same time, one specific area that you felt like you could still improve on when you came or sort of embark on this journey? And how did you go about sort of shore up your skill sets and get better at doing that? So please be specific. It's going to help the audience tremendously. Thank you.
I might start this one just because I should also plug the fellowship that we're a part of, because that's how we got started, I'd say. So John and I are fellows in the Activate Fellowship, which is like a national funded fellowship to essentially pay for a startup coming out of deep tech research. And that is exactly what they exist for. It's to, like, take people that invented really cool technologies from academia or industry or national labs, like pluck them out of that environment and be like, you could commercialize this because it's very important and we'll help you. And so they teach essentially scientists how to gain those skill sets to succeed in commercialization. And so for me, actually entering from academia to that, to commercialization, the first thing that I realized was a huge roadblock was just like, not the technology, communication, but the communication in general, where as scientists, when you talk to other scientists, you never take an absolute stance. You're like, I did this, and I expect the mechanism that's doing it is this. But you never say, I'm 100% sure that this is what's happening. You always leave room for error, because there's always error in everything. And commuting that way with VCs was a huge no in the beginning. Because they're like, oh man, this is amazing, it's gonna totally work. And I'm like, well, I'm pretty sure it's gonna work. And they're like, that's a huge red flag. And I'm like, what do you mean? That's how the world works, like nothing's absolute. And so it took really understanding like the communication and the language and kind of like the motivations behind a lot of different types of capital, really, to be able to also effectively communicate to them in a way that felt honest and well brokered. So, and Activate was like, yeah, you need to think not just as a scientist, but as every other stakeholder that will be a part of this.
I'd love to maybe just answer it as well, just to be very specific, like you asked. First of all, Activate. Highly recommend everyone who's considering and is a scientist to look into it. There's product development and tech and science and business development. And within business development, there is customer discovery and go-to-market strategies that you have to think about. And to me, the things that I think that I didn't really realize is actually how much overlap there is in being a scientist and being curious and testing hypotheses on business development side of things too. So I had no idea about like being a good go-to-market strategy developer, but just testing those hypotheses was something that I thought was really valuable.
We got one more. Yeah.
Hey guys, thank you for sharing your journeys with everybody. I'm on my second one. I'll talk a little later, but I'm wanted to, I guess, comment/question, but what do you do for work-life balance? Because if you're truly have something world-changing, you're going to be spending 80 hours a week on it. And if it's as game-changing as you're saying, there's no excuse to do any less. So how do you approach taking care of yourself and the role of work-life balance in being an entrepreneur?
May I?
Yeah, go for it.
I disagree. And this is coming from somebody who is working 80 hours a week. I think that is a failure on my part. I think that it is extremely possible to have a good work-life balance, and you just need to be able to work efficiently and effectively. And there is an obsession that's required, I think. And it should be something where it is a little bit of a blend, where you do feel like you're playing, but your health matters. And so that includes mental health too. So you're just not going to perform at your best if you are consistently working 80 hours a week. I mean, I think there are studies, there's like relatively understood mechanisms of decline in performance past maybe a 50-hour mark. So I think it's very possible to have a work-life balance. I'm not always the best at it, but I would say don't feel intimidated by this culture of needing to be absolutely ground to the bone to be able to be successful. And I've seen people who are able to maintain.
You don't need to grind hard for 80 hours, but when you're asleep, it's in your mind.
Yes, 100%. When you're asleep, it's in your mind. That to me is a matter of like, I'm kept up because I'm excited, not because I'm afraid. I'm like I love this. And that's the blend of play. Like when you can blend it with play so it doesn't feel like work, that's I think a different story.
I would agree with that. Like, kind of marinating in the ideas that I have for the technology takes up like my whole life. Like I think about it while I'm eating cereal in the morning. And that's not necessarily work, but I'm just kind of like, oh, ideating. And then, but on the grind part, like, there's definitely times where like something will hit the fan and you're like, oops, gotta spend 100 million hours right now. But then the rest of the time that doesn't exist, it's like delegation is your best friend because you're building a team that is inspired by the technology or the mission or something. And so the delegation goes ideally fluidly, where someone's like, yes, this is something I can do better than you, let me do it. Offhand, everyone has like a much more sustainable, no burnout kind of work style.
I would second, honestly, everything that was said here. To be honest, when you're going down the entrepreneurship journey, you just kind of have to know that you're going to be thinking about this. This is going to be your life almost. And what I have found that honestly, I'm still learning how to balance work and life, but there are times to where you can sit and think, oh wow, I haven't not thought about this in a couple weeks. I probably need to take a day off, right? I need to go and have that in being very cognizant and being able to switch almost your character from, okay, I'm a founder to I'm a 24-year-old in Austin. I'm gonna go and enjoy myself. I'm gonna go to Barton Springs. I'm gonna go hang out with my friends. And being very cognizant of you need to turn it off, because when you do turn it off and you do take care of yourself as a human being, your work is gonna benefit from it also. Because you're gonna come to work the next day instead of waking up and thinking, oh wow, I have to go, or I have to go do this. It's, oh wow, I get to go do this. What a fantastic opportunity. I'm excited. And switching that mindset to that is something I'm working on. I'm not great at it yet.
Cool, positive note to end on. Thank you guys. Really appreciate it. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.